Going live. So welcome to the Humane Mind Live, episode 102 already. Wow. So this is Real American Zero versus Austere Religious Scholar. It's obviously a reference to both the canine in question and then al-Baghdadi, the Washington Post reference to al-Baghdadi. They described him as an austere religious scholar. And then the hero dog that Trump tweeted about, people have been bashing the dog as if that's an attack on Trump, which is absolutely bizarre. I got a couple other topics that I want to go over in the stream. And again, I do my stupid pun titles for each of the topics. But the first thing I want to talk about is she puts the ass in Russian asset. Cali-for-nah, nah, you can have it. Or Cali-for-nah, you can have it, whatever. A banner year for broccoli. That's kind of a mashup of two different stories. Drag queen flashy time hour. I mean, it's one of those things. It keeps escalating, and I don't know why this thing is still being allowed. All right, that's probably the most frustrating of all the stories to talk about this evening. Then there is, so this is just a rephrasing of the title of the episode, The Goodest Boy versus the Washington Post's favorite terrorist. And if we have time, I do want to get back to our discussion on the Communist Manifesto, but I was not able to stream last week for various reasons. So everything that was planning on talking about last week is kind of mushed in with the stuff I wanted to talk about this week. So hopefully we can get all that squeezed in the next 45 minutes, and then it'll leave us half an hour to an hour to continue the discussion on the Communist Manifesto. We'll see how it goes, though, because there's a lot in these topics. Yeah. So the first thing is the Russian asset, because this was, again, 2 weeks ago when this was kind of all over the news. Tulsi Gabbard was being called out as a Russian asset by Hillary Clinton, because everybody's Russian. It's like that, everybody's Russian. What was that, Friday dub from, Djibouti Dubs. And everybody's Russian. Anyway. Actually, I switched over to the screen a little bit early. My bad. So anyway, that was the thing that was all over the news, is Hillary Clinton. She didn't mention Tulsi by name, but it's kind of like, everybody was like, yeah, she's talking about Tulsi. That's not... she talked about Jill Stein as well was a Russian asset.
It was confirmed later by one of her staff.
Yeah, I guess she was talking about Tulsi. Yeah.
Yeah, and said, "Yep, that's who she's talking about." So yeah, they just direct.
Yeah. So immediately Tulsi responded to this, and I mean, this was like #1 trending on Twitter and all that sort of thing. And on Tuesday, it was found out, like, so this is the man, this all happened last week. So this happened Tuesday, and I wish I would have been able to stream Tuesday night, because that's what I would have been talking about, is Steven Crowder kind of dropped a bomb, although it kind of is like the natural progression, because he previously had talked about YouTube restricting his own content, and people were showing that his channel would show up in searches for his name, but none of his video content. It was all content for other people's videos. When you did searches for his content, it would be the name of his Change My Mind stream, or Change My Mind episode, or whatever it was. He would search for that, and it would show other people talking about his video, or other people linking or doing short sections of his video, rather than the full video itself. It's like, you'd think that would be the #1 search. It's like, if you enter the exact name of something, that should be the top result, or at least the top 2 or 3. But his wasn't even on the first page. And he's like, well, there's my channel, but look, all of these are other people's channels, other people's content.
Most of them were videos or rebuttals.
Yes, there were a lot of them that were, there were counter arguments to what he was saying, and not his actual stuff. But when other people used VPN or searched that in their countries, they were seeing the content you would expect to see. Search for Steven Crowder's channel, and then all of his top videos, and then other people's rebuttals later on. And if you search for the name of video, you're seeing that exact video as the first or second showing up. And they're like, yeah, that's... But in other countries, they're seeing the results that you would expect. And it's only in the US that you are seeing this separate list. And then he found that out. Tulsi, while she is being called a Russian asset, and she comes out and counters and calls Hillary, she came out like this long description of Hillary, calling her corrupt and scum. I don't know if she actually called her scum. Well, I wish I had I wish I had that pulled up, because she has a reference describing Clinton as the coward and horrible person she is. And she was like number 1 or number 2 trending on Twitter after that, because Hillary Clinton had made the claim on Twitter. Tulsi responded on Twitter, and everybody was talking about it for 2 days. During that 2 days, Tulsi's channel, nothing. The next day, or maybe a couple of hours later, then her content shows up on YouTube. And that entire time where her channel stuff, or her information, her stuff wasn't showing up on YouTube, it was showing up in other countries. You could do the exact same search for her channel and the content that her channel was producing. You could not find her content in the United States. But you could find her content if you were searching in Spain or Germany or anywhere else but in the US itself on YouTube.
I'm wondering if they are doing kind of a temporary throttling in order to get it through people's minds, and then they forget about it. So if you hear about a topic or story, if you look it up and don't find the information that's going to make you say, I had no idea, or I can't believe this is true, or get valid information, you'll skip past the story, and a day or two later you're going to forget completely about it, and then they can just let it go.
That is exactly what they're doing.
Target audiences.
Yeah, that is exactly what they're doing, because that's exactly what they did to Tulsi when she was trying to run Google Ads after her debate. When she was the number one searched candidate after the debate. She was like, okay, this is the perfect time for us to run ads when everybody's thinking about me, when everybody's trying to get more information about me. Number 1 search. Oh, by the way, for some reason there's a payment processing error, and we're just not going to run your ads on the pivotal time frame for you to run ads.
Well, the other suspicious thing about that is she was in the first 2 debates.
Yeah.
Did not get put back on for the 3rd debate, because you have to, I think I have a 2% approval rate or polling rate within DNC off of like 4 major polls.
Yeah.
She was sitting slightly above 1%. Had they run her ads and her campaign messaging just like everybody else, she would have been well above the 2% and would have participated in that 3rd debate.
Yeah.
They basically shot her down, and that's why she could not.
Yeah. And it seems like Google is directly influencing this, as Google is, responsible for the Google ads, which Tulsi is suing right now. And also, Google is the parent company for YouTube. And YouTube seems to be the one throttling specific content at pivotal time frames. And it's not just the, you didn't spend, it only cost you however much money, or it didn't cost you any money, but it's not a monetary thing. It's like hey, everybody's looking at me. This is how I get my message. This is my platform. This is my 15 minutes. This might be the only window I got. And if the platforms, Google's the number 1 website in the world, followed closely by Facebook and then YouTube. Those YouTube and Google are 1 and 3 on the most used websites in the world. And both the 1 and 3 have shown repeatedly they are specifically targeting Tulsi Gabbard whenever she becomes whenever she becomes the target of people's attention. That's deliberately when they're like, no Tulsi right now. They've done it. That this is the 2nd time that they've been shown doing that. And it's specifically targeted at her. I mean, there was people doing searches for other people's content at that same time. Like, we're not seeing this throttling or this hiding of their stuff. Now the Crowder stuff, that seems to be an ongoing thing with their channel only, and it's only in the US. If you go to another country and you're looking for their stuff, you can reach it without. So the implication of that is this is deliberately them trying to impact U.S. elections because they're prohibited information that they think might impact the election in 2020. They're throttling in the U.S. only. That seems to be the logical conclusion that you can get from this. That's not conspiracy theory. That's just kind of like unless there's some other reason that people come up with why this might be happening. But it doesn't make any sense for this to be an error on the part of the system because it's temporary. And Crowder showed in his video when he's talking about this, is they talked to someone, and that someone specifically made the change on the fly. Like, not like we'll get back to you in a day after we fix this. No, it was like a 15-minute phone call, and during the phone call, oh, by the way, now all your content that you expected to see in the U.S. is now matching what we see in Germany and what we see in Spain. Wonder how that happened in 15 minutes on the phone with somebody who's got the authority to make a change like that.
Could be happening is if they look for unnatural spikes in attention with anything considered political, it gets sorted into a filter bucket that says, hey, down the view, so every kind of a fair share view.
Yeah.
But if one particular person or a group or a political debate or something bumps up, then that means they are not going to get the media attention or the online presence as it normally should have because those spikes are natural. So it's either they have a crappy filter for being one of the biggest search engines in the world that's saying, oh, there's a spike in political talk. Let's push that down so we can get other content out there. Let it sit for a day or two. If they give us a call, we'll kick them out of that filter, within a few minutes. I doubt that because that's not happening to anybody else. That's happening to select people.
Well, and like you said, that has to be a filter. It has to be a specific search or a specific subset that says, hey, exclude this. And then they're switching back and forth between those two. Like, hey, this is the one without that exclusion. This is the one with that exclusion. So, because they seem to be able to switch through this on the fly. And if somebody was able to actually audit YouTube and or Google, that's something they would find in the audit and be like, hey, this is not something that your system should have because you're relying or you're advertising yourself. You're telling people, your customers, people who use these things regularly, that it's algorithmically finding videos or finding content for them based on their search history, based on their preferences. If you've got somebody going in and manually applying a filter, that's fraud. That's saying, oh, never mind, you're not really in control of what you're searching for or building a pattern of things that you would like or that we could recommend because somebody else is coming in and manipulating that with these filters or with these levers because that somebody else coming in and manipulating it is not something that if they're doing that, that's something they have to tell customers. Like, yeah, by the way, we're manually changing things, so things that you might want to find, if we say that you can't see it, you're not going to see it because that's going to drive people to go to other platforms where those restrictions aren't in place. Things like BitChute, even places like Vimeo, and even though they've got, what's the other one? Dailymotion. So there's other websites that let you upload video and let you watch video and stream video. But those other websites, if they're not doing this, people will start migrating towards those other platforms, and YouTube will lose market share because this is not something people want. But the fact that they are doing it surreptitiously, the fact that they're telling people, oh, all of your searches are based on algorithms and based on your search preferences, they don't tell people, oh, by the way, we're manipulating things and we're hiding content that we don't like for you to have. That's not, they're saying, they actually testified before Congress that they're not doing that. They're not manipulating search results. They're not hiding content. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, but that's just the algorithms. I'm like, you're hiding behind it's just the algorithms when an algorithm is just a preset formula. It's like, hey, that means it's a formula you guys built and somebody is manipulating that formula. It's not organic. It's not based on user activity. It's based on what you guys are manually putting into that formula. That's what this is kind of pointing more and more towards. All right, that's a little too much on that topic, but so while we're talking about Tulsi being a Russian asset, and she mentioned something last week, or this I guess was 2 weeks ago, just about. She went on this kind of a little thread about the Kurds, right? The Turks versus the Kurds. So she talks about so Syria versus Turkey, and she kind of ends this thread with this little phrase: "U.S. Trump just gifted Turkey a large chunk of Syria. Would America be okay with Syria if Syria gave California to Mexico?" And I was like, you can see in the comments here, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I've got no problem with that. Actually, this is your best campaign idea yet." California to Mexico? All right, how do we make this happen?
Senor Deng, I'll allow it. That was my first thought was, yeah, let them have it.
yeah. If Mexico wants California right now, California is dragging the U.S. down.
Two issues. One, if she had said Texas, that would have kind of changed the sentiment.
Yeah.
California has been separating themselves from the general U.S. populace for a while now. They do not click with a large portion of the country. I understand there's a lot of people there, but that's a crowded, packed city.
Mm-hmm.
Other than Los Angeles, San Francisco, and a couple of the major cities there, the rest of the country is staring at them like, what a bunch of loons. It's crazy been over there.
Yeah, and there's reports of San Francisco being literal human feces in the streets, and I'm like, yeah, so
and needles.
So pretty much just like what you'd expect to find in Mexico. Okay. Yeah, so not gonna see a whole lot of change if Mexico says, "Hey, we're now under new management." Did anything change? Nope. It's gonna be exactly the same. But at least
so not quite the best state.
Yeah.
But additionally, Syria is not ours.
Yeah. That's the thing that
we went there to
sense here.
We partnered up with the Kurds because they also wanted to get rid of ISIS. Mm-hmm. We did our job. Then we left a couple guys standing around because Turkey was still getting hit by radicalist groups on the northeastern end of Syria. That has nothing to do with us.
Yeah. And like Trump kept saying, we had maybe 50 troops there. We didn't have a big... It's not like we had a military base and an operation there. No, we sent in a couple of troops to help clear out terrorists because the war on terror was approved, and that's still something that's ongoing. So that means we sent in a troop. Hey, we're helping deal with terrorists in that area. If the Kurds and the Turkish people want to fight, that's not why we had our troops there. It was not hey guys, stop fighting each other. No, our troops were just there to deal with the terrorist threat. Once the threat is kind of eliminated, it's like, okay, time to get those guys out of there. They've been there way too long. So that's what Trump did. He pulled them back because their only responsibility was to deal with terrorists in that region. Terrorists are done. Now, if the Turks and the Kurds want to fight each other, go back to fighting each other, I guess. But the crazy thing is like this was on the 17th. I think it was like a couple of days later, or at least it was sometime pretty recently. They called a ceasefire. They had like 1 or 2 days of fighting each other.
I thought it was like 20 hours.
Yeah, maybe 20 hours. And then they're like, yeah, this is stupid. And then they called a ceasefire.
3 or 4 days.
Yeah, it was not very long though. And it's from what I can understand, there wasn't like a huge body count, even though they were releasing videos of this is horrible devastation. I'm like, yeah, that's the shooting range that we talked about that 2 weeks ago. But the amount of death and destruction from that little clash, it was, granted, any death is something that shouldn't have happened, but it was kind of unavoidable. It's like, hey, if two people want to fight each other, sometimes you kind of have to let them. You can't just go in there and be the bouncer, especially when it's somebody else's house. It's like, that's like going into somebody else's party and be like, oh, you guys can't fight in here and like that. And
oh yeah, like if you went to a frat party,
yeah,
and there's two guys going at each other's throats, you don't belong to the fraternity. You just stepped in because of the noise complaint. Put your hands out. Hey guys, calm down. Yeah, I'm gonna camp out here. make sure you guys don't fight for your entire stay here. That's not your job. That's not your position. You don't belong there. Fine, you want to show up to end whatever one conflict because it is affecting you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have tweets above that, but I'm not quite sure I 100% agree.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you want to read through these. So
on Twitter.
Yeah.
So Trump the Kurd, I got you a great deal. I gave Turkey your homeland and homes, and you have 5 whole days to pack up your families and leave before they slaughter you. The art of the deal, how to sell what's not yours. For the confused, we should get our troops out of Syria ASAP in a responsible way. It's up to the Kurds/Syria to either fight for or surrender their territory to Turkey. No part of Syria belongs to the U.S., so Trump does not have the right or power to give away a piece of Syria.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
It belongs to you. But the issue is, if we just pull out and nothing was done, many Kurds would have just been slaughtered. They wouldn't have ever had a chance to escape. He didn't give away any land. Turkey was just going to take over. They basically wanted to establish as DMZ and said, we want this buffer zone because we're tired of you guys coming over and causing terrorist attacks in our country. Because there's a radicalist group within the Kurds that have been attacking Turkey for who knows how long.
Yeah. So I don't agree with her take, and usually she's kind of anti-war, and it does say she wanted to pull out of Syria. But she was saying we needed to establish that ceasefire before we left. And everybody else was like,
how would that have ever happened?
Yeah.
In fact, I think because we pulled out so abruptly, Turkey decided, oh, this is our go, and then they started looking around on the global scale, and everyone's kind of giving them the stink eye, like, hey.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason they agreed to at least a 5-day ceasefire. We would have been sitting here for decades trying to separate two groups that don't get along. We've already been doing this in other parts of the world,
and it never works. As soon as so
does not work.
Yeah, every time that we do that, we sit there being babysitter. Hey, don't fight. We have troops there that ends up being there for years trying to keep these two people from fighting each other, and it never works. And it's like every time and then as soon as we leave, they start fighting again. It's like, so what was the point of having us spend our troops there, spending our time, our energy trying to keep these two groups don't like each other. They are going to fight each other, and it's in the case of Turkey and Syria, they got back to fighting, and then we're just like, you know what? There's no point in this, and they call a ceasefire, and it's more than just a 5-day ceasefire. This is
if they have done an extended ceasefire, that's on them. That's not the U.S.
Yeah.
Trump sent over, and they negotiated I believe it was 120-hour halt on Turkey's front or their invasion into what they wanted to make a kind of a buffer zone.
Yeah.
To allow civilians to back out, and then after, I think they all just kind of decided, you know what, maybe we'll just leave this area, but we are not going to attack any further. So I'm not quite sure how stable things are over there, but honestly,
it's not our place to get involved. And if we,
like we were
hoping, if we made it our responsibility to keep those two groups apart, we'd have troops there indefinitely. Which, it's like, oh, we need to get troops out of there ASAP, but we need to do it responsibly. Yeah, that's how they got there, and that's how we get troops in a position for decades. That's the mentality that keeps them there, and Tulsi's supposed to be against that. So, while I don't think she's a Russian asset, I do think she's kind of inconsistent on these kinds of things.
I don't think she's inconsistent. I think she's just hoping that we can always establish some sort of peaceful exit. I don't see that as possible in certain areas of the world. Sometimes, we'll do our job. We'll make sure everything is stabilized, and then we'll say, okay, we're leaving in 2 months. Make sure both sides, you got your stuff together, and let's just, let's cut out the fighting. Maybe that's doable in some parts of the world, but in the Middle East, a lot of these people have been fighting for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
It's what are we going to do to stop it? And the main reason we went there is not to separate them from fighting. It was to get rid of ISIS.
All right. So these next two stories are a little more concise in what they are, because I don't really have much to comment on them, but I just want to show these couple of videos here. So this is This one kind of speaks for itself.
Others, look behind you. Hey, get out of here. You gotta go to work. Get the out the way. Get the out the way. Go. Get the out of here. You get the.
All right, that's all I'm gonna play of that video. But man, dude, you can tell that guy is pissed, and rightfully so. They're standing in the middle of the street holding the banner across the road, and people are honking their horns at it. It's like people have to go to work, and you can see him. He's in scrubs. He works. I don't know if he works in the emergency room or. But that's who they're blocking. That's who they're preventing from going to work. People who, granted, I don't know, maybe he's not that important when it comes to the hospital, but if he is, like, supposed to be in the emergency room or supposed to be helping people, like, going to surgery, or they are affecting people's health. So the people holding the banner were radical environmentalists, part of the, what is it? I don't know if you remember the name of that group. The same group of people that was standing on top of the subway train, or the train station that got pulled off and beat up. Climate explosion, or I don't know the name of the group. I wish I could remember. Maybe I can look that up in a bit, but not much else to say on that video, but yeah, same stupid shenanigans, and people are getting fed up with it because they've got lives, and whatever these climate alarmists are going crazy about is not something that affects people right now, and people have things to do right now. Even if the climate was, gonna be this catastrophic thing, that's something that we can handle when we get there. Right now, it's not an emergency, and these people keep trying to make it an emergency.
Well, I mean, so this makes sense as far as the climate alarmists and these activist groups. What good does it do to block city streets and prevent people from going to work and doing their jobs? If this is a massive issue and you feel that the government needs to step in and do something and regulate companies, then go protest in front of your government capital. Go protest in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House, and, go protest somewhere where it actually, but a random street where all your entire purpose is to block traffic, what kind of message does that actually give across? Other than a lot of angry people not even reading your banner, just wanting to punch you in the face. It doesn't actually do anything. I don't understand where they get these ideas from. If I was going to protest the hospital, you go right in front of that hospital and protest. Or if I'm going to protest Home Depot, go to the Home Depot parking lot and protest in front of the building. Why in the middle of a street? So, I don't get it.
I don't get it either, and this is kind of the follow-up to that, which makes even less sense.
From your view, does this look rehearsed?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's ad-lib?
I don't know if it's...
Because there's people saying things. Are they kind of saying the majority of people are clowns because they wouldn't recognize a piece of broccoli if it was sitting in the middle of the road? And maybe that's what they're getting at?
I have no idea, dude. I don't... It's...
I've watched it a few times, and I'm just wondering what this is supposed to be. I mean, they got clown noses on and goofy hair and weird outfits.
Like, what's that called?
Stupid.
It's kind of like interpretive dance where they think they're making a message, but nobody else looking at it is like,
you're just like, well, I watched nothing.
That's not deep. I don't know what that was supposed to mean or what the message was. The point of that. I don't know. You got me. I guess you could. That's as close as I can get to trying to They're saying that people who are people who understand that this climate alarmism is nonsense are clowns who don't understand what broccoli is. That's the message I got out of it.
That's what I'm kind of thinking. They're just saying non-climate alarmists are clowns, and they don't understand.
Yeah, I'll look up whatever that group is before the end of the thing. But I'm trying to chug on along because we're at 32 minutes already. Okay, this next one. Oh, all right. Drag Queen Story Hour. We've talked about it before. First, there was the sex offender who was there and didn't apparently do anything with the children as far as we know, but they didn't background check a sex offender who was doing Drag Queen Story Hour, and had that person not been caught and kicked out, who knows? And then there was the sex offender who had little children crawling on top of them. And then there was the sex offender, or not the sex, so then there was the drag queen doing the twerking as a part of Storytime Hour. And it just keeps getting worse, because now we've got this. I don't know if you can see that headline. And, well, I'm pretty sure the picture speaks for itself. Thankfully, it is blurred, but this individual was at Drag Queen Story Hour without underwear while wearing a miniskirt. And why is this at this? They keep claiming it has nothing to do with sex or nothing to do with, with
kids, but it's right in front of the kids. I mean, even the last two gay pride parades in, where was that, LA? Bunch of naked dudes running around with their junk hanging out. Parents bringing their children, trying to show how supportive they are of the LGBT community. It's not for kids at all. None of it at all. Whether you're just trying to change your gender to something else or it's your sexual preference, not for children.
Yeah.
At all.
It should not be around kids. I don't know.
Not for children.
The need to include children in what is, for all intents and purposes, it seems like just a sexual fetish. I don't know how you can get around that when it comes to the drag queen thing. It seems to be, there seems to be a definite sexual component, and they're trying to include children with that, which I don't.
Because if they can persuade the public that it's at least acceptable in some form around children, that means for the general public, everybody should be able to accept it. If it's okay for children to be there, you as an adult can't really say anything. That's like being offended at a Saturday morning.
Like
they push it out and it's okay for children. What's there to complain about? You're an adult. Just grow up. Children are fine with it. So it's a push to make it seem that it's acceptable by even the most innocent in society. Therefore, it's not a bad thing.
I would say that's probably the claim, but what seems to keep happening in practice is more of the, hey, pedophiles are seeing this as an avenue to show their junk to children or to groom children.
Right.
That's
correct. That's also I don't think that's the majority of the intention, but that is the very slippery slope. I don't even know if it's a slippery slope. It's just like a straight street. I mean, you can just all the time point this way, pedos enroll here. This is your avenue to finally be accepted.
Kind of like advocating, or advertising to them, like, hey.
Anybody's watching this stream, no, not saying LGBT accepts pedophilia.
No, that's
or that
it's
people, but it's along the same thing of they're born this way and you're born this way, and this is just their sexual preference and that's yours. That's actually more similar to LGBT versus trans.
Yeah,
those were more separate.
Yeah, so I've talked about this before on streams. Is they've set up the rules in such a way to allow themselves, but those rules do not prohibit pedophilia. And they are the same. The rules that they set up to allow their lifestyles is because it demolishes any kind of structure that would prevent pedophiles. Pedophiles are putting themselves into that group, and while the current LGBT is like, oh no, we would never allow those people in our group. We'd never. How do you stop them? They're all of your ideology. You've removed any barrier that would prevent them from joining your group. At this point, you're making an arbitrary distinction. Yeah.
If you say I'm anti-LGBT plus whatever, or I don't support that group, you're instantly ostracized in public spaces like Twitter and Facebook, and you're considered a homophobe and a misogynist.
Mm-hmm.
It's already in Western society. You can't really oppose those groups without being labeled some sort of bigot. That's going to turn around and be played on them because they're going to abide by the same rules that are previously set up. And then when they say, nope, I understand what you're saying, but you're a pedophile. And they're like, well, are you a bigot? Yeah. You seem to be a pedo-misogynist or whatever the new term is going to be, because they are playing by the same rule book as the LGBT community has been pushing for the last 20 years, 30 years.
The same arguments that people are using for LGBT lifestyles, those same arguments can be used by pedophiles to protect their lifestyles or their sexual attractions. It's like, if it applies to you and if it's perfectly rational to you, you cannot deny that same rationality for these people. And to me, that's a huge problem. And that points to a problem with the arguments that the LGBT community is making to justify their lifestyles.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, yeah, so that's the unfortunate thing that has happened, and it's going to continue to happen until people start to be like, okay, maybe we need to put some kind of restrictions or some kind of, maybe drag queen story hour, that should be a no-go. That should be something that is stopped, like, because this is going to continue until at least a line is drawn somewhere, and then we can start making some kind of rules for society on what can and cannot be allowed. But until we draw a line somewhere, you can't restrict anything that these pedophiles end up doing because they're operating within the LGBT setup.
So most of these news stories, most of where this drag queen story hour is happening is major urban cities, West and East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find this stuff in the middle of the country.
No.
That's not really going to be tolerated anywhere in the middle of the U.S. So it's what's being pushed out on the media and what you might see on Twitter and stories. I'm under the impression the majority of Twitter users are progressive. People like me, there's quite a few on there. I may occasionally read.
Majority, it's probably somewhere closer to like 70-30.
Yes. Because that's the vocal group. That's the one that says, no, you need to believe this and you need to take these ideas serious. While the rest of the country is like, no, I've already got my beliefs. I'm established. I don't need to argue with you every day about it. So the stuff being pushed out on social media, I think, is leaning heavily towards progressive ideas. So the line's not going to be drawn there. It's just going to be drawn in middle America, where it's you try and come into my state with that garbage, we're going to shoot you down. It's the same reason we have so many states that just this year have been pushing for heartbeat bills.
Yeah.
Because they're tired of being told what they have to do. They're a totally different state and do not believe on that garbage. So, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be a civil war per se, but it does seem to be splitting.
All right, so and then we'll move on to the last story. We're at 40 minutes. Hopefully we can get this.
But lastly, that's also gross. Why would he not have any underwear on? He's going to a library to read to children.
Yeah.
That should be the last time everybody say that's common sense. I don't care if you do drag. You're free balling with a mini skirt in front of children. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Even if he wasn't sitting down, that's like, dude. That's
Just no.
No. Even if
you want to put your little mini skirt thing on, put your junk up.
Yeah,
something.
Even if he was wearing pants around kids, no, you have to have something on underneath that. You can't go commando even in pants around kids. Because what if your pants ripped during your whatever? Yeah, the same issue. Yeah,
zipper's not all the way up or something.
Yeah, like dude. Anyway, all right. So the last story is the main topic for. So. The big thing that was all over the news was al-Baghdadi died over the weekend during a raid. Trump has been tweeting about it, and then for some reason, because Trump's tweeting about it, Orange Man bad, so anything he does has to be equally bad. And so Trump originally tweeted about al-Baghdadi. I didn't have that pulled up. Instead, I've got him tweeting about the dog involved in the raid. So originally he talked about al-Baghdadi, and he said that al-Baghdadi died like a coward and a dog, which is a phrase which I don't understand why this is like, oh, why did he use the phrase dog? I'm like, that has been a phrase since forever. Like,
what, a cowardly dog?
Yeah. Or die like a dog, right? That's
almost every never.
And it keeps popping in my head, that scene from Hot Shots Part 2, where it was Saddam Hussein. Like, you will die like a dog. I almost wanted to insert that clip in here, as if it was like, hey, I got raw footage of the Trump versus al-Baghdadi fight. That didn't work, because it would be Saddam Hussein. Anyway. Like, dude, yeah. So it crossed my mind, and I opted out of that. So Trump wasn't actually involved in the raid. It was special forces involved in the raid. No one was injured on the American side. This dog in question did suffer minor injuries, but al-Baghdadi did die like a coward. He exploded himself and his 3 children. And for some reason, media is trying to spin that in the weirdest possible ways. So let me just read this real quick. What Trump tweeted out about the dog. We have declassified a picture of the wonderful dog that did such a great in capturing and killing the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Now, the narrative of what actually happened has not been made official or anything like that. But what it sounds like is this particular dog was chasing al-Baghdadi, cornered him in a hallway or somewhere that he could not escape. Al-Baghdadi, because he knew he couldn't get away, blew himself up, and that killed al-Baghdadi and himself, and minor injuries to the dog that was chasing him. That's what it sounds like. I don't know. That's my... When I heard this, piecing things together, I'm like, okay, that would kind of explain why no soldiers were injured, and this seems to make more sense, and that's kind of why Trump is tweeting out the pictures of this dog. And going back, because Imam Tawhidi said something about this on Twitter, is he was talking about Trump used very specific language because he knows in Muslim cultures, dogs are lower than people. And so it goes men, dogs, women. That's the order of hierarchy for some reason. So the only thing more embarrassing than being dead due to a dog would be to have, dying because of a woman. So, I don't know if that... So that's what his claim was on the... And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, is they view dogs as... Yeah.
I mean, when you listen to the way Trump talks about him, and he keeps inputting these different adjectives to describe this guy, that he died like a coward, it's because... If that's your enemy and they're a terrorist, you're not going to say, well, it was a good fight, but we finally got him.
No.
You're not propping them up on a pedestal saying, hey, that's a champ right there, fighting until the end. You're going to say that the coward, they died like a dog, like a piece of crap, and if anybody else does the same thing to us, they're going to die in the same way.
Yeah.
You do not attack the U.S., you do not threaten us, that's how you will die.
Well, and before I get on to the... okay, let me... Yeah, I got one more. I guess I should switch over to the next tab here. So before I go on. So Trump tweeted about this, and people have been making... So one guy... So right now it says that the name of the dog has not been declassified. Somebody else quote tweeted this and posted the name of the dog. He's like, well, I hear from sources that this is the name of the dog. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
it's a joke. Like, what does it even matter?
It doesn't matter, but why are you posting the name of the dog as if that's like, it's kind of like attacks against this dog in order to try to get at Trump.
He doxed an animal.
Yeah, he doxed an animal because he's like, oh, I'll show you, Trump. Haha, this is the name of that dog. What? It's a joke on Trump's part, but people are so adamantly against Trump, they're going after this dog that, for all intents and purposes, is a hero. Like, that's why I like goodest boy. And look at this. Yeah. Look at his face. Like, he is super happy. I mean, he's dressed up in his yeah,
like commando style. Got that little vest, whatever strap thing.
And just look at his face. He's all happy and smiley. And I was like, dude, that dog is awesome. And somebody else posted about this. He's saying, like, yeah, that dog has seen more, or just came back from war and looks happier than Beto's dog. That's pretty good. But there's other people in here who are trying to badmouth this dog and trying to. It's really bizarre.
Even can't read. It doesn't get on Twitter. You're not hurting its feelings. You can't lower its social status. It's just a military trained dog.
Yeah. So the Babylon Bee ended up posting a story about this. And so it says, CNN uncovered evidence that hero dog sniffed dozens of butts back in college. So the Babylon Bee is on point with this stuff. So as soon as they started seeing people tweeting stuff about the dog, and you're like, wait, are they seriously not? Because Trump called this dog a hero, and people are saying, oh, they're downplaying. The dog didn't really do anything. And, oh, I'm sure Trump doesn't care about the dog. It's like, all these people are downplaying what the dog did. From what I again, this is not the official story. This is what I think happened based on the information that is available. Is it sounded like this dog was actively chasing down Baghdadi when Baghdadi was like, okay, it's now or never, and killed himself. And he was, I'm assuming, Baghdadi hoping he would take out a couple of the U.S. troops with him, but only ended up killing his own kids and minor injuries to the dog chasing him. So that's what it sounds like based on, the circumstantial evidence we do have. And people are trying to downplay this dog. It's like, oh, I'm sure the dog didn't have anything to do with any... And Trump is just tweeting this out because his statements about calling Baghdadi a dog. And I'm like, sure, it's very, very frustrating to see how much spin is it, especially because that's not even, like, the main takeaway that happened is, oh, crap, where, I had it, okay. Here's, the Washington Post. This is not something that has been manipulated or edited for Twitter. This was their actual obituary for him. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, austere religious scholar at the helm of Islamic State, dies at 48. That's what they wrote on him. They changed this after the fact. They still did not change it to him being a terrorist. So here's the hashtag WAPO death notices. People have been lampooning this. There's an entire thread of people making obituaries for evil people. So, let's try to... I think a lot of them have gotten buried.
Man and women's rights activists found dead in chair.
Yeah, talking about... Joseph Stalin, world-famous defender of working-class rights, dies at 74. Joseph Uncle Stalin, heroes, 74. So there's a couple of these that are on, There's just an entire thread of people making obituaries for the most evil people in history, serial killers. There's a couple for Hitler, there's a couple for Stalin and Mao, and Ted Bundy, aspiring attorney and politician, hopeless romantic, known for his practice of free love, dies at 42 from faulty electrical outlet in his lush Florida apartment. Scar, hyena rights champion, key driver for inclusion in rights policies for oppressed hyenas, into the dominating line pride supremacy, loving brother, admired uncle, tragically dies at 30 from heart attack after emotional group hug from his hyena friends. So that's pretty good. There's a couple in here that are really good. Mao Zedong, author of Little Red Book, best-selling book of all time, died at 83. Wife and close friends arrested. So, dude, it's so bizarre. The Washington Post would, because I didn't set this up a little. I guess so. Al-Baghdadi, because I was listening to Stefan Monalou's, because I knew knew he was a bad guy. He was a terrorist. He was responsible for, what was her name? Michaela? No, was it Michaela? What was the name? It was a woman who went over there to protest or whatever, and she got abducted and was repeatedly raped by al-Baghdadi himself, and then eventually killed. So that's what I knew about beforehand. I can't remember the woman's name. Sorry, it's escaping me at the moment. I'll remember it later and be kicking myself. Maybe I should look it up. Anyway, so on top of that, so this is something I found out today listening to Stefan Manolu. It's not just that he killed one woman. He's been in charge of. He's the leader of ISIS. So hey, leader of ISIS causing terrorist activity around the world. Also kidnapped and raped a woman, but he also came out with a policy where he was telling the ISIS members that if 10 men raped a woman, she would become an Islamic convert, and they could save her soul by gangbanging her. So that was an official letter that went out to all of the ISIS members, and so they began kidnapping women and raping them, and making sure that at least 10 different men had raped these women. Because that was converting them to Islam.
How was he an Islamic scholar when he just pulled that right out of his rear?
I don't know.
That's not part of Islamic doctrine at all. Minimum of 10 men raped. In fact, Islam is kind of the opposite. It says it's the woman's fault that she does get raped. I mean, I guess that's kind of the harsher... What is that, Sharia law things? That's why they're supposed to stay covered up in the indoors.
Yeah.
But it's not advocating for gang rape. So that's just something.
Yeah, that's something he made up, and the Islamist terrorists and people that were following him were doing that. They were abducting women, and he also put out a policy where he was seeking toddlers and infants for them to kidnap, because that was, I don't think that was from what possibly the rape thing, but I hope not. But they were at least kidnapping children and then selling them to other people. I don't know how much of that involved in the sexual aspect of it, but that was one of. So he put out this policy for 10 men raping a woman makes her an Islamic convert. And also, we need to kidnap as many children, especially those under 3 years old, because they would sell them to the highest bidder, and that's how they're funding a lot of their ISIS activities. Granted, that was probably one of their primary income streams once Trump had denied them access to their oil lines. Ugh. Yeah, horrific individual. Even after the Washington Post changed the title of it to be austere religious scholar, they still don't call him a terrorist. They still don't call him a heinous, evil individual. I'm like, dude, that's just about as evil as you can get. Advocating kidnapping children, rape, and murder. I guess he didn't do it in the millions, so he's not Hitler or Mao. But these are probably the same people who don't think Mao was an evil person. But it's because he was an enemy that Trump took down. For some reason, they gotta polish that turd.
Oh, I think that's the person that banned me the other night. They said they were a Maoist.
A Maoist? What?
Yeah.
He's only got the highest death toll. Maybe Pol Pot has given him a run for his money. No, I'm pretty sure Mao. I'm pretty sure Mao has the largest death count in history. Because it wasn't his 60 million. I think Pol Pot only got to 30, maybe 40. At least 60 million under Mao. I'm a Maoist, really.
Yeah. The other day, and I want to get on a side tangent, but with current progressive policies, if you are, say, your typical conservative and you are a pro-lifer, we're already in the millions just on abortion. We're already quickly jumping up along with those guys. I mean, we're 950,000 abortions a year since early 2000s?
Yeah. I don't know how many that.
Or current trends are we're almost about 1 million per year.
Oh, whoops.
So we are very quickly going to pass Hitler, Stalin, just killing our own. But it's okay because it's her body, her choice. So again, I didn't want to get on a side tangent of that, but just stating those guys were out in your face. We have a sect here in our own country murdering millions, but it's kind of in the background. It's considered the normal part of society. 500 years from now, if the U.S. no longer exists, and there's other countries looking back like, how could they just kill all their kids like that and think it's okay? We might be in the same books.
Yeah.
Well, not we. I don't agree with it.
It's.
But
it is
the
definitely
US
going to be. I'm pretty sure. In a couple of decades, maybe 2 or 3 decades, we're going to be looking back at this, and we're going to be looking at it the same way we look back at slavery. Be like, how did that happen in a supposedly civilized society, based on the Enlightenment, based on the idea of human rights? How did that atrocity occur? And I mean,
because they're not enlightened. If you notice, the people who participate, the people who do it, are progressive. They have an elitist attitude where they are better than.
No, I understand the people involved, but I'm saying in a country founded on the principles that America was founded on, how did the leadership allow the citizens to participate in that for so long? That's the. And granted, looking back at slavery and all that, I can see what Jefferson was saying. He feared a civil war and all that sort of thing, and he was trying to come with a staged approach to eliminating slavery. But they wanted to outlaw slavery in 1776, and didn't happen. And I was like, the idea of the staged progress to get rid of it, it kept just pushing it back, and very little was done to actually make it a thing. So it's I do think that, like, Jefferson's my favorite president, still is, but I think he was incredibly wrong on his view on that, and he should have just ripped it off like a band-aid. He kept trying to, oh, well, maybe if we just ease it in a little bit this way, we can avoid a civil war and we can avoid a conflict. And because he was so unwilling to rip it off and have a small skirmish that would have occurred at the time, instead, those tension built up for decades, and when that, by the time it became
part of an 2 or 3 generations gone by, this being the standard in parts of the country.
It became so ingrained into the South that by the time something had to be done, it wasn't just a ripping off the Band-Aid and a small pain and, hey, maybe a little bit of a clash. It ended up being the bloodiest war in American history. That's so that is the I think Jefferson did a lot of good things, but I think that one thing almost undermines his entire legacy, which that's a huge blight on his record, at least. So it is 8:15. Do you think we have a little bit of time to continue going down the? Oh, whoops! Didn't mean to activate that. To talk about the Communist Manifesto, or are we not going to have enough time?
Yeah, I may have another
maybe
30 minutes or so. We'll see what we can get through.
Okay. Why is this not showing up? There it is. Okay.
Where did my book? 1 sec. Let me go grab my book.
All right. I'll get this set up and get back to last place we were at. All right. Because if I'm not mistaken, we were in section 2 and we're about 2 pages in. Okay, and while he is away, make sure I'm not scrolling too far. Where was
Okay,
it?
back.
proletariats and communists. Oh, okay. So I do want to clarify something because we talked about this last week. So when we were talking about these, he was talking about the abolishment of private property. I think we were having. So you were explaining what he was saying, right? He like, yeah, I get that he's saying this is not this is not something new that communism is introducing. This is something that's been in other systems, and I'm seeing his art. What I was trying to talk about is, there are sections that he is deliberately leaving out or not considering when he's making these arguments. And what I was saying is, like, if you include the things he's leaving out, these contradict each other. So this is not a consistent philosophy. It's consistent in the way he's presented it, but it's not consistent if you understand what what property actually is. But he's using, based on the definition, the confined definition he arbitrarily puts here, then I guess his for these 3 paragraphs, I'm putting my fingers as if you can see what I'm pointing at. So he says, the abolition of existing property relations is not that is, so that highlighted section and the next 3 highlighted sections, those are all kind of based on his limited definition of private property or property in general. That's a consistent argument. However, his definition is arbitrary, and that's what I was trying to explain. But this section right here does directly contradict what he says later when he says, when he's talking about yes, we do want, where does he say that?
And this is just some scary stuff.
Yeah, so that right here when he says, in one word, you reproach us for intending to do away with your property. Precisely so. That is just what we intend, which that contradicts those 3 altogether. So it's kind of like, why did he bother setting up and going through this entire just to undo it right here? It's because that is a sophistic argument where he's trying to paint a picture, and by the time he gets here and wallops you with this one, you're not prepared for it because it's comes down to nowhere, and you've forgotten at this point in going through it, you've forgotten that those other things exist. Because if this was a argument or debate between 2 people, you'd be focused on what he's saying right here, and you'd focus on that, and what he had said previously kind of goes out the window, and kind of it's a method to try to bypass your
correct. It's like Hansel and Gretel, the witch's house. The outside is attractive. It's something that you say, I can kind of see some of those points at first, but when you follow the logical conclusion, you realize, oh, this is horrible.
Yeah,
this is what you're trying to do. Yes, but ignore that for now. Here's what we mean at the start. This is all we're trying to do just at the start.
So by the time he gets to this point, it's too late. You've already taken the bait. You're already coming in, and now he's got you arguing over something that is already, and you've taken previously what he had said as a given. That goes out of mind, and this becomes the focus. And so that is his way of smuggling those ideas in and taking them as if they're given, or they are as if they are true before they've been actually properly rebutted, because he didn't mean any of it. He said it, but he didn't mean any of it. And when he gets to this point, because you took that as on the faith value, you continue to take it as faith value, even though he said right here, never mind, that was all a lie. But by the time you get to this section of you've forgotten about what the lie is. That is a sophistic tactic to smuggle in ideas that he then proceeds to go off of those ideas, even though he never intended those to be true, or he never intended for that to be. But you still are operating with that. It's but he doesn't really want to do that because he said he didn't really want to do that, and you just keep operating as if that's the case. Hopefully that's not I think I might have. Hopefully I explained that correctly. It's you still have it in the back of your mind that he said this thing, even though you're not thinking about what he said. Because right now you're focused on hey, he said he wants to get rid of private property, and you still have it in your back of the mind, but he said he's a nice guy. It's and that sticks with you, and that's what carries on through the rest of this. But when I was reading through this, I saw that, and I was like, wait a minute, that's that right there, because I know he doesn't believe this. That stuck out to me.
Okay, so I'll give you an example, I guess, to make it more relatable if anybody is watching this. So I kind of do that in my arguments. I'm a deconstructionist. I will break things down to just core arguments, core components.
Okay. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's getting to the root of the matter.
I mean, that's kind of my method. I like to get everyone back at the same starting foot. Hey, let's both get off on the same pace, same foot, and then we'll see where this goes, if that logically makes sense for the both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of break down into core components, which it seems like that's what Karl Marx did here, is try and break it down to the most easiest digestible components at first. So I remember about a year or so ago, we were talking about some streams, and when it came down to abortion,
mm-hmm.
I don't jump into all these facts and statistics. The way I argue abortion is to break it down into core components and just say, would you rather? So remember, I said, would you rather keep abortions, or would you rather not need them? What sounds better?
Not need them.
So I break it down to the core. I understand we have them, but would it be better if they weren't necessary? Let's go off of that premise. And that's based off of my core beliefs that human life is of value even before they're born and in the womb. However, that is somewhat deceptive, because that changes the focus from just being in the middle. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? It still kind of is relevant, but it changes the perspective or the paradigm, basically saying you have two options. Now, one is already in place and one sounds better over here. Which is better? And it's not need abortion. And my argument would be, well, let's work towards not needing them rather than keep them going.
Well, okay, so I agree with what you're saying there, and I'm saying that is a valid tactic. What he did here is he said something that he knew he did not believe, and that he knew would appeal to people who disagreed with him. But he didn't.
Correct.
He didn't. Yeah.
My arguments, even though I do kind of break things down and deconstruct it, my core beliefs are always my core beliefs, and my goal is to push that core belief forward in my argument or my statement. It is the ultimate sum of everything, is still the same belief I started with, whereas he's not correct at all in his initial statements. If you follow those to the logical conclusion, they shift to something completely different.
Yes, he makes that shift, and if you're not paying attention, you don't realize it. So people who are in... So I'm not sure if I just noticed it because I was looking for it. I'm looking to pick his argument apart, and I'm looking for these things. He's like, oh, that right there, I recognize what he's trying to do, because I know what ends up happening, what his final argument is, because I've read his other writings. This was his first major piece of literature. And I was like, okay, I know what his end philosophy ends up being. So what he's saying right here is like, oh, there's no way he believed that back then, because later, and I'm like later, oh yeah, there it is. He's saying he actually doesn't believe what he just said. That was the bait to get you into the argument and get you, but now it's too late. You're already in. You're already focused on the new thing that he's getting you to focus on. He's dictating he's dictating the narrative of the, I guess, but granted, it is a manifesto. That's kind of the purpose of it. But it started with a lie, a deliberate lie. And if you weren't looking for that lie is going to get through, and you're not going to recognize the lie for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you look at the outcome of communism, it is to level the playing field for everybody, to say nobody can succeed.
Yeah.
You will all have the basic standard of living. You all have the same housing, same clothing, same food, same education. It's going to be completely state-run education. That way, everyone across the board, same opportunity, and that's how we make things balanced and equal. But it gets rid of humanity's differences or uniqueness, what makes you an individual completely. And the only way something like that could operate is being state-run, supervised by a higher governance to make sure everything stays in order.
Well,
that's kind of the end. But at the beginning, he's saying, all we're trying to do is get rid of the people up above you, the bourgeoisie, so you can rise up.
Yeah. So what his
balance
claim is that
everyone at the bottom.
Yeah, his claim is that there's this middle line, and then you've got the people up top and the people on the bottom, and he's gonna squeeze these two people together so they align with the middle, and then everybody's at the middle. That's his claim.
To where no one else is in charge.
But what ends up happening is these people stay down here, and these people get brought down, and that's all that happens. It's like, wait, the top gets taken away, and those people and then the middle starts to get down here, and then everybody's down here.
Where the entire country is living base level, bottom tier.
Yeah, they never quite get to the point where they raise people up beyond where they started. It brings all people down to the bottom level.
I mean, everything he stated kind of is the opposite of that. They're of the opinion, if you're raised up at all in stature or class or within society,
well, it's not because you taken away and brought to the public as a whole.
It's because you've taken advantage of the average worker.
Yeah,
I mean, he's repeated it multiple times in the stuff we've already read.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're successful, you've stolen it from workers. That's the only way you can get up there, is his opinion.
Oh, dude, and I had a conversation with somebody today. I was, or maybe it was today or yesterday, but it was the stupid long thread with some communist guy. And he's talking about Apple and Amazon stealing from the workers, and he kept describing work as always exploitation. And I'm like, so
no,
yeah, that's completely bizarre, completely incorrect view of work and of business. He also claimed that they don't have a choice, and I'm like, well, if they don't have a choice, no one would ever leave the lower class. No one would ever leave a manual labor job. Once a manual labor job, you would always stay there because you don't have a choice. So, but the rational explanation of what is occurring is someone who works
his
minimum...
low skill gaining skill through their life.
Yeah.
And they're able to rise the rank because their skill has increased.
But the correct way to explain the disparity, disparity? No, that's not the right way. Disparity, yeah, the disparity in income of what somebody who is a CEO earns versus what somebody who is a low-level employee earns is a low-level employee has a one-to-one relationship. One employee, one boss. He works, he gets paid. That's it. Now, when you go to the next level up, a manager has a one-to-many relationship. A manager has several people underneath him. And the number of people underneath him kind of determines how much he makes as a middle-level employee. So it's a one-to-many. So the worker is making money off of his labor. And that is, he's making money. If he wasn't making money laboring, he wouldn't be laboring. But he's making something. Now imagine that if a manager has 15 employees, they may not be making 15 times as much as a manual labor, but they're definitely making more income at a faster rate than the manual labor because they have that one-to-many relationship. And if you keep going up and up, the CEO has 1 to millions. And hey, where do you see this? I make $15 an hour and he makes $1 million an hour. Oh, that's because he's making 1 million trades in my one day. For every one day, I work one day and I get paid for one day's wage. For every one day for him, he is paying 1 million people and he's earning money off of every person he pays. He's making money at 1 million times the rate I'm making money. That's where the disparity comes in. It's the ratio of 1 to however many. If you only got 1 to 1, that's as good as it gets.
It's also the risk assumed. I mean, we had this discussion last time. If you're at the very base level, bottom tier, you work in an assembly line or whatever, if you hurt yourself or you decide to quit or you're angry and you sabotage the machine and walk away, you may have stopped the assembly line for a little bit, but they can replace you within possibly some jobs the same day. Call up a temp company. Hey, we need a guy to come work the assembly line. Got it. We'll have a guy over in an hour. Right? Mm-hmm. That's not going to cripple the company. Your risk is absolutely nothing. You're just paid for the labor.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, as you go up, the risk becomes much more substantial. If you're in the director of the entire marketing department and your marketing blows, you could cost the company everyone's paycheck.
Yeah. So a big example of that is Blockbuster.
Everyone on the assembly floor.
Yeah, Blockbuster Video. They had
Up
the
on the-
opportunity to buy Netflix. They turned it down. Blockbuster is now bankrupt and out of business. Nobody is employed by Blockbuster. Netflix is one of the, was one of the major streaming services. That was a decision from a CEO that cost his business everything.
Yeah. They don't even have name brand like nothing. There is zero left of that company at all. Just gone. Nobody even bought them up.
Yeah.
Because after that decision, that would have been poison.
Yeah.
There is no reason to own that company when another company just blew them out of the water. Was partnering with this company, they're just dead. They're gone.
Yeah.
All those people, millions. I mean, they've had how many stores? Thousands, tens of thousands.
Because somebody was talking about this on Twitter. It was 80,000 employees. That's 80,000 employees employed by Blockbuster went bankrupt. All 80,000 out of a job
because of a bad decision from a higher up. This is where the risk lies.
Yeah.
They're also the ones, since they are in charge of that amount of money, that are responsible for, taking care of that money and allowing it to grow to support the business. You work on an assembly line, that's none of your concern, and you don't have the risk. You can go home at night and go to your family and do whatever you want. Those guys in the CEO and upper positions, they're working about 80 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just 9 to 5 like everybody else. It's constant business. One slight hiccup and hey, this production plant's down and we need to get something going, and you're getting a phone call at 3 a.m, and now you're flying off to a country to figure out what happened and talk with the directors over there to see how do we get this back up and running. They're busy constantly.
Yeah. All right. So moving on. So page 24. Hopefully we can get through a couple of pages here.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Just well said. I just want to keep moving on. All right. Yeah. So you must therefore so I got this one highlighted again, and again it's now we're moving to the point where it's been a couple of weeks since I've read through and had all my thoughts written. Hopefully I was hoping we could have gotten this all scrunched together in a couple of weeks, but man, it's been too spread out. So I may have to reread this and then go through these notes again for next week. But so you must therefore confess that by individual you mean no other person than the bourgeoisie, than the what is that in relationship to? Okay, you must therefore confess that by individual you mean no other person than the bourgeoisie, than the middle-class owner of property. This person must indeed be swept out of the way. Why is... So, okay, I guess I was highlighting that because he's talking about the individual as if the individual only means the bourgeoisie. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, because going to the paragraph above that, so from the moment when labor can no longer be converted into capital, money, or rent, into a social power cable for being monopolized, from the moment when individual property can no longer be transformed into bourgeoisie property into capital, from that moment you say individuality vanishes. Who says that? What? Because again, he's using his definition of property, where property is only what can...
He's saying this is what the bourgeoisie are thinking. If we get rid of private property, my way of life is done. My individuality is gone. Because when he gets to the next statement, you must therefore confess that by individual, in quotes, you mean no other person than the bourgeoisie, than the middle class owner of property. This person must indeed be swept out of the way and made impossible.
Yeah, but that's
so
not what this means.
The bourgeoisie are in fear of the workers standing up for themselves because it will remove their individuality, their comfort of life, and their high standing.
Yeah, so this is just a flat-out wrong understanding because every individual can own property, and what property is the work of your own hands, what you've built, or what you've been given.
Okay, So I've seen some documentaries, historical period movies, things like that. And if you look back at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we were just coming out of feudalism, right? You had landlords, you had owners, dukes, and various other monarchs, and they owned all this property.
Yes.
They were the ones that initially invested in industrialization because they had the means to do so and they had the land. So they were the ones like, hey, these plants, we can make a big product here and make a lot of profit. Go ahead, we're setting up a factory here. So they were kind of the forefront of that. Without investors liking it, the Industrial Revolution would have had an extremely slow start, and who knows what it would have fully kicked off. But they kind of boomed it and said, you know what, this is the future. And a lot of landowners and money owners already had it. However, because this was coming out of feudalism, they also had a sort of elitist, classist attitude. There was a difference between them. There were the lords, and then there were the peasants or the people below. That's the way society operated. So he kind of jumped in near the beginning when that was still how class was viewed. Now, we still have various classes today, but it's not based off of business. Not every business owner is an a-hole, and everyone working down here is a poor, subjugated worker working for the overlord. There are plenty of business owners that are very humble, very down to earth. They built their empire from the ground up. They didn't come from old money. It's a different mindset. They are not of this bourgeoisie stating, I'm stealing from all these people. They're thinking, these people depend on me for good jobs. I need this company to do well because I'm paying their checks. It is their family. It's a completely different mindset, and I think he's stuck on that notion that that's the way all businesses operate.
And
even when you look at people like Bill Gates, that guy has donated millions to various researches, helping people in third world countries, cancer. Yeah. I mean, just all kinds of stuff that if he was this bourgeoisie hogging all the money, why did he do that? That doesn't sound like bourgeoisie to me. I understand, yeah, he's got a nice house, but he's donated more money than I will ever be able to do towards charities and towards the betterment of third world peoples. That's not a bourgeoisie mindset that he keeps spelling out here, where their only view is to exploit.
But even during Marx's time, the feudal lords and all that stuff were long dead. He's writing this in the 1800s, so he's still operating as if feudalism was just, a couple of decades ago, as opposed to a couple of centuries ago.
They think of it like Oliver Twist, like early 1800s, where you've got all these old gentlemen with their styled mustaches and beards and top hats, and my lady, and a kid runs by, and you dirty street rat. There was different classes within society. There were the upper class who dressed nice and bought their suits and their derby hats and whatever, and they treated other just general workers kind of like lower class citizens.
So I get what you're saying. So because in the pre-industrial and in the early industrial revolution, the people who got into there were the former nobles, were the former landowners and things like that. Correct. And so then their descendants and things along those lines had a similar idea. But as capitalism began to build up steam, you had more and more people coming from the lowest ranks and rising to the top. And they were kind of replacing those. But there was still a good portion of them that had that old mentality of, I was kind of born into this, or this is my birthright sort of thing, and all of you people are low peasants and you could never do what I do. So you still had a good majority or a good portion of them that had that mindset. And during his lifetime, during Marx's lifetime, there was that transition from where it stopped being the majority of the people owning the businesses coming from old money, and it started being more of the people who were the new upstarts who were encroaching on their territory. And that was during Marx's lifetime, where where the newer money overtook the old money. But at the time of this writing, it was probably still the majority of the people running businesses were of that old mindset of, you guys are down there being a lowly laborer, lick my boots.
Because the old money was always looking for land and investments, but once we actually got towards modern age and it kind of when the stock market shot off, that's when new money started to cycle around like crazy and allowed investors to invest in smaller businesses, which brought other lower businesses up, Now that person had money to start investing in other ventures. It's what built up this cycle of businesses springing up, kind of like this geyser. Yeah. But things did not circulate like that pre-industrial revolution. Why do I keep saying that weird? Or during the early stages, revolution.
All right.
Fixing 2 words or something.
So we're about 8:40. So let's see if we can get through the rest of this page in 20 minutes or so. Hopefully we can get through another page. Okay. So it has been, so that, I guess that puts a little more of this in perspective, because I was just thinking.
I mean, that's kind of the picture I'm getting. Is that's how he views bourgeoisie, as these upper class people. And while we still have that, it's kind of like Hollywood.
Yeah. So that does make his perspective a little more reasonable. But the thing that I don't understand is how people are still making claims based on the same mindset in today's society. They're still making these same arguments as if this is...
It's the same argument with slavery. We had slavery back, before the founding of this country, and it went all the way up until whenever that was, 1865. Was that when the Manifesto was signed? Or 63? Somewhere in that time period. Okay, I think it was the constitutional amendment that abolished slavery was 65. Regardless, that's already been like 150 years ago. And yet we still have people talking about slavery and institutionalism of slavery and how it's corrupted every aspect of society, rather than saying society is better and has gotten better since then. Why don't you participate in society in a healthy and, profitable way that's going to build you up along with everyone in this country? Instead, you're sitting complaining about how things were at that time. So Karl Marx just took a look at current situation. So yeah, there are some people in need and there are a lot of slums. This was kind of the evolution pushing towards society getting better. And he just stuck on that point and built the rest of his philosophy based off of that. There's always bad transitional periods. Mm-hmm. But if you stick with only the bad side, your philosophy is going to be way askew. You're not waiting towards when things get better and say, how did it get better? Let's keep repeating that process, not the process that made it get worse.
All right.
So that mindset still sticks around, but it's just people who they have to have a particular narrow view. That's how they
also say
exist.
That might be why he and Engels never actually put into practice anything that they were preaching about, because they were always looking at it as if that's a problem in the entire industry. It's the entire system, and so even if we put our practices into place at our own factory that we do have control over, it's not going to fix the overall problem. So they never even bothered, because they've got this. They're looking at all of the evil around them, trying to fix all of that instead of what they can fix. Oh, okay.
So from their perspective, it's let's get our message out, voice it, but I'm not going to actually take any action on it because I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's the same victim mentality of people talking about slavery, because they're like, oh yeah, look at all the evil actions of the past and all the people who benefited from slavery, and they never bothered to do the things that they could fix in their own lives, because they're so focused on that large problem.
Yeah. So it's that type of mentality that brings these viewpoints into perspective, or causes these viewpoints to seem relevant to people. I mean, just judging by the way he's talking, he does seem to have a biased view against what he would consider the bourgeoisie, the upper class.
Yeah. Even though he's looking at them.
Yeah. I mean, Engels had,
I guess maybe not necessarily him, but Engels definitely was a part of the bourgeoisie, and Marx was just benefiting from it. So he was living like the bourgeoisie, although not being actually a part of it, because he never worked a day in his life. It's much like Bernie Sanders. All right, so it has been objected that upon the abolition of private property, all work will cease and universal laziness will take over. And you saw that. Saw that in practice in almost every country that this has been implemented.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he's trying to argue against it is like, oh, this is your claim that what will happen. I'm like, Well, we've got proof that this prediction did occur. So his objection to that is, according to this, bourgeoisie society ought long ago to have gone to the dogs through sheer idleness. What?
It's not idleness. It's incentive to work harder and smarter. And what he's missing is what he's hoping would happen is that people would say, for the benefit of society, I will do my job for the benefit of my, my country and my people. I think that's a good perspective to have, but there's a big difference to say, I'm going to put these bolts into this car door for society versus someone working at a humane shelter, helping people out who have been injured or rescuing animals and saying, for society. The person helping out the animals or handing out food gets that more instantaneous, I'm doing something of benefit. This guy's putting bolts in the door. Mm-hmm. He has nothing relating him to for society. It is just a grinding job day to day, and there's no way to excel. So why would he work harder?
He wouldn't. And the very second that he learns he can do under the minimum, that's what he'll do. And then eventually, nobody even notices if I don't do my job. All right, I'm just not going to do my job.
Yeah, the quota is divvied up through the whole plant. Or even if there is a minimum quota, they can just go stick me at a different job that's easier because I'm not doing this one anymore.
Yep.
That's the only way you can guarantee everyone has access to what's in the society is if they're not doing that job, just get a different job where they will do something. But that means everybody is going to be looking for the lesser and lesser work because no matter how hard they work, they get the same benefit. Yeah. You have access to these supplies, access to the same amount of food like everyone else. So it's not that people are greedy and wanting, that's their only drive to excel. There is no reward in life when there is no immediate benefit.
Yeah.
And for those who are helping out the homeless and poverty and traveling to other countries, and that is an immediate benefit because you get that gratification of helping someone who was physically in need. But when you're in an assembly plant, there's nobody in need immediately around you. You don't know who's getting this door for their porch or, these slabs of wood. You're just cutting stuff. But when you work in a capitalist society where they say, hey, you've exceeded quota this, every single day for the last 6 months, you're getting a massive raise. We want to keep you here. You're doing a good job. There is reason to excel and do your job better because there's always that reward of at least I get better pay or at least I'm up for promotion. When that ability to excel is gone, most society is going to do exactly what he said.
Yeah. And so his argument was that the bourgeoisie practice a life of idleness. So if the abolishment of private property would encourage idleness, then hey, the bourgeoisie, because they're idle, they would stop existing, right? But the problem is yes, a lot of the bourgeoisie, a lot of the upper class that you're kind of depicting of the business owners or the children of business owners who kind of live in the ritzy posh areas. Yes, most of them didn't do very much work or no work at all in Marx's time. The problem is that they didn't have to because they did have money coming in. So even if they were idle or didn't do anything, they still had all of their needs met. Whereas somebody who is in the working class, if they were in the same boat, if they stop working, the stuff stops getting produced. If the children of the bourgeoisie or the bourgeoisie themselves stop working, things still get produced. That's what he's completely missing in this argument. He's, then the bourgeoisie would have stopped existing because they just live a life of luxury and they don't do anything, and those who work, don't acquire anything, and those who, and everybody else just doesn't do anything. And I'm like, that's because they have all of their direct needs met because someone else is currently producing them.
Actually did happen. Well, to some aspect, to a certain point. So if you look at old school, right, you're coming what I would consider early bourgeoisie or based off of the feudal system, where you had your lords and ladies. And if you come off that idea, they had old money. They were the ones who initially invest in, plants and mass production. There was no other competition because nobody else had the money to start up. As the Industrial Revolution progressed, other smaller businesses started to kind of catch up. New ideas came about that allowed smaller businesses to surpass these old plants that haven't been updated, safety standards are subpar. Now it allowed newer, fresh faces to be able to get into the market, produce competition, which means they actually had to work if they wanted to stay in business, or they would have lost all that old money.
Yes.
Every CEO, no matter how evil you think they are, bust their rear or their company will sink. In capitalism, everything is competitive. You have to work even at the top level or your company will fail.
Yeah. But so even with that, there are still the heiresses like Paris Hilton and things like that who, they're just kind of they're just dumb and they're just kind of getting. But the big difference that he's missing with his
dad's gonna say, "Hey, you're the president. Now hand it over." No.
Yeah. So the big difference that he's missing here is if the people that are already a member, that the people who already are kind of top, they already won. These are the people who have had a successful business or their parents have had a successful business. Either way, if they stop working for one day, the business will go on without them and they can still have all of their needs met. Now, if the people underneath, the people at middle management, the people at the bottom rung, they haven't reached that point yet. If they stop working, they stop getting what they need. And so he's talking about this, we could get rid of private property and people would still work and still have all they need. And it's like, but that doesn't, the same logic doesn't quite apply, because somebody who has reserves, someone who has a life savings to fall back upon, somebody who has an inheritance or what's it called, a trust fund, someone like that can take a day off and not suffer. Someone whose very dependence or their life is dependent on the work that they're currently doing, they can't take those days off. But he's acting like, they would just keep doing what they're currently doing because they would have to. And that's like, that doesn't quite match up to your what you're claiming about the bourgeoisie not working. He's trying to use people who have fallback and reserves, who can do nothing for the rest of their life if they so choose. It's like, well, then they would stop. Yeah, what's stopping them from, from being obsolete? It's like the fact that other people are doing the work. But if everybody was able to take time off and not have to work, the theory that most people or enough people would continue to work doesn't make any sense. And yet that's what he's trying to argue right here. He's trying to say,
there are those industrial people.
There'd be enough people working to keep everything going, so that way people could take time off and do nothing and be idle. It's like, no. There are people working right now who are working to keep things going because they have to. That's what keeps it going. You can't compare the people who are not working because they don't have to and be like, see, those people stick around, so the people who are currently working because they have to, well, if money was eroded, wouldn't they just do what the bourgeoisie that you're currently complaining about right now? This is a very bizarre argument, because he's trying to use this to defend his own personal position. It's like, wait a minute, but you talk about right now the bourgeoisie not doing anything, and you think that low-wage laborers, if they didn't have to work, wouldn't act in the same way as the bourgeoisie that you complain about? What sense does that make? This whole argument is very bizarre to me. This entire paragraph that I'm looking at, the according to this section, I'm like, man, the more I look at this, the more this does it doesn't support what he thinks it does. In fact, if anything, this should be a counter argument to what he's trying to claim. All right, maybe I've gone too far on that. It is 8:56. So abolition of the family, even the most radical flare-up of this infamous proposal of communism? Maybe that's... Radical flare-up of this infamous proposal of communists. So not seeing this in context. Is this something that he just starts mentioning? Internal law. I think this is the start of a new thought, because this does not quite match up with either of the two previous paragraphs. So I guess this is a common rebuttal to communism that he hears, and he's trying to rebut that. Okay. So, on what foundation is the present family? The bourgeoisie family based. The same foundation as every family. But, and he's claiming it's based on capitalism, on private gain. It is completely developed form. In its completely developed form, a family exists only among the bourgeoisie. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletariats and in public prostitution. Ooh.
So basically what he's stating, in the couple paragraphs that you kind of gleaned over here, to sum it up, he's saying that if the bourgeoisie disappears, then your individuality will disappear. Mm-hmm. But he said the only reason that it seems like an issue to you is because you have been told and indoctrinated with the idea that there is bourgeoisie, that there is private property to be obtained. So that is what you strive for. So that means having that already indoctrinated into you, you are going to raise your children by saying, here's how I have succeeded, and I will pass this knowledge down only to you. That way you can succeed. But if we abolish the bourgeoisie mentality, then a bourgeoisie family where parents instruct their children on how to be successful will disappear. This is right after he starts advocating for state education, where everyone is taught the same, cannot have a unique family. This will, again, level the playing field to where whatever individual ideas bourgeoisie parents want to push are eradicated, because everyone has the same base level of education, and that's what you get. And then you're assigned a job. And now the idea that you can succeed and get things of your own are no longer a desire. Instead, your desire is just simply to work for the state, the people. So he believes that it's a mentality enforced by what everyone would consider a nuclear family, just normal parenting.
And so I get what, so looking at this entire thing, he's advocating for social education, also known as public schools, which so many people are adamant about these days, because it was the thought back in the day as if this was actually a fear of when schools were made public in the first place, is that parents would no longer be the ones educating their children. It would be everybody would be getting the same education, everybody would be being told the same thing, everybody would kind of be indoctrinated, which we've seen.
They're absolutely right.
Absolutely. This fear was absolutely right, because this has been playing out. But with the traditional family, mother, father, and their children, the mother and father take more precedence, or I guess they're more concerned with their own children than they are of, say, their neighbor's children. So they are more, like, if there's a chance for their son or daughter to succeed, rather than Billy across the street, who cares about Billy? Billy's not my kid. I want my kid to succeed, even if that means Billy's not going to be able to succeed. That is the thought process of most families. And that entire process would undermine the socialism or the communist society that Marx is trying to build. Because...
Correct.
Yeah. So he starts talking about this, and actually he's advocating the need for eradicating the family as we know it. Yeah, and replacing it with social education, so all people would be on the same playing field, and no parent would take concern over their own children rather than the children of society as a whole. Man, that is...
You're not allowed to prioritize anyone. Whew. And we already see this playing out, because when you look at, say, conservative viewpoints, a lot of school systems in the middle of the country who haven't yet been indoctrinated with current progressive ideologies, parents still have a say-so in what their kids can do, what is taught to their children. That the kids come home and say, well, I was taught this, and that's like, no, that's not quite accurate. here's what happened during the Civil War, and here's what both sides were doing. You're kind of only getting one perspective. Parents can still teach their children.
Yeah.
You get more towards coastal cities. If you start teaching your children that, they're almost to a point where they can take your children and say it's child abuse.
Yeah.
They're already trying to do that with the transgender or LGBT movement.
Yeah.
Where in California, in certain areas, if your child makes a comment in school, hey, I'm a girl, and they're biologically a boy, and you don't do anything, you don't go see a therapist, you don't start them on a path to see are they trans and should they transition and be put on a hormone therapy. If you just say, nope, you're a boy, cut that out. They consider that child abuse. And now the state has more priority over your children than you do.
Yep.
So it is already springing up. And it does seem to be in the socialist, progressive parts of the country. That's why we have two different mentalities. Where in the middle, most people are raised, work with your own two hands, build your life up, work hard, be diligent, work smart. You don't need the government to hand you money. You go earn your money. You go earn your living. You go build yourself up. Whereas when you get to the coastal cities, it's, I don't have everything I want. I'm oppressed. Government should give it to me. Yeah. They don't say, I need to go earn it myself. And that's the difference between the families, how they're raising their children and how they're taught. And this is what the state is trying to teach the children, that the state provides everything.
All right. And I think we're going to have to wrap it up there, but there is one sentence I just glossed over, and it was not highlighted, but this right here is, so do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime we plead guilty. Because he considers it exploitation for parents to teach their children what they've learned in life and what they've taught. And like I was saying, it's like you want your own children, you've got a preference of them over, say, somebody else's children. And he's saying that is a problem. It's a problem if you do that to your children. It's not a problem if we do that to your children. If we teach your children what we think is true. That is scary.
Yeah. That is a scary bill. It's not worded. He's not flat outright stating, hey, your child has an advantage when you teach them this. We want to eliminate all advantages. But that's essentially what this leads to.
Yes.
He's saying with this children being exploited by their parents, he doesn't mean they're being forced to work. He means that these children are being taught this education, which is different from whatever his vision of society is, and that is a different mindset which sets them apart, and this is what leads to them becoming a bourgeoisie. They shouldn't be told they're separate. They should be told the same thing as everyone else, that everything is across the board, and that's what will level it out and prevent people from rising up to become bourgeoisie. So it's based mass indoctrination.
Yeah. So it's wrong if you teach your children, and we'll call that indoctrination. But if we teach your children, that's fine. That's not indoctrination, man.
There's a lot of places where this is already under fire.
Yeah,
we still see this
completely changing the definition of indoctrination.
Homeschooling is under fire. Everyone needs to go to a state school. Some of these policies are starting to be pushed in very progressive areas that they don't want private schools at all. It's the exact same thing spelled out right there.
Yeah, it's scary that this was in those documents as far back as that. Oh, come on. Why is that not showing up? Alright, I got one more thing to kind of end, because, so, unless you wanted to say anything else about the manifesto, but I got one last thing to kind of, little short thing to end on, so it doesn't end on a downbeat. But, man, why is this not showing up? I don't know. For some reason, OBS likes to ignore that Windows or certain windows that you have pulled up exist. You gotta kind of keep refreshing it and getting it to recognize that, hey, there is something there. Give me 1 second here. I'm trying to switch from the PDF to, there it is. All right, now it recognizes it. All right, so ending on a little bit of an upbeat, and this is something I meant to talk about a couple of weeks ago, but oh well, at least I'm getting to it now. So this is a man. He goes by the tag The Persistence, and he was actually at the Donald Trump's the social media summit. But since then, he has been going around the country to those, I guess, dump sites like Baltimore and San Francisco and places like that. He's been organizing cleanup efforts, and this is his latest one.
Yeah, with the long hair.
Yeah. So this is his latest effort.
Hey everybody, this is Scott Pressler. I'm in Dallas at a place called Shingle Mountain. It's hundreds of tons of debris of shingles right here in Dallas's backyard. Hey everybody, this is Scott Pressler.
So that's just him describing the situation. Yeah, so they got all that cleaned up and disposed of. So he's just going around to these places that are notorious, just I guess public landfills. Yeah. So what he's talking about is this shingle debris. That's not at a designated area. That's just like I don't know if this was a construction site or something that was just abandoned, but this is out in a public space and no one is taking responsibility for it. Similar to the Baltimore, like that area behind those apartments and stuff like that. So he's been organizing cleanup efforts to go and fix this. And it's really remarkable because he's gotten a lot of people. And one of the recent posts, I don't have this one linked, but he was talking about he's getting reports from people in India doing the same. Like they saw him and were inspired, and they started cleanup efforts in there. I was like, dude, that's I don't know what this guy did previously, but he talks about like
that's the right kind of activism. Go out and do something that people can see is helping. Don't just sit and yell about it and impede other people. I think the report I read about in San Francisco, he had 200 something volunteers.
Yeah.
And they cleaned up how many tons? It was either 20 tons or 200 tons of garbage within a 2-day period.
Yeah.
And they did it all free, and that's more than San Francisco has been able to clean up in an entire year or multiple years with billions of dollars put into their recycling and waste management systems.
Yep.
2 days. And he did the same thing in Baltimore. And I remember when he first went out there was all kinds of people ragging on him and people in Baltimore. You saying our city's dirty? We don't need your help. And you can just look at the ground and say, well, here's dirty. Can I just clean this up?
So the main thing I want to talk about that is like he said, 200 people helping him with that cleanup effort. How many people did we see in those videos doing the environmental activists where they're out there, protesting and stuff like that? It's at least 100, if not 200, and all they're doing is blocking traffic and doing these stupid chances like
and throwing garbage in the streets.
If you
the exact opposite of
as like if you
glitter
want to, this guy is setting the right example, and he's getting people to actually clean up and if these environmental activists, if they weren't out there causing disruption, and instead if they started doing stuff like this, they get more people involved in their causes and cleaning things up, but they don't. The fact that they're out there blocking traffic and causing attention for themselves, like this guy hasn't really raised too much attention about this. He posted about the efforts on media and has been advertising around to get people to help, but as far as media coverage has been mostly nothing for this guy and what he's doing. Meanwhile, the activists are getting all kinds of media attention, and it's like it seems like those people, because their efforts are crazy, they're holding banners and blocking traffic and they're doing stupid clown routines with broccoli, it shows that they are all about the attention and not about getting anything done. Whereas this guy, from what I can understand, he's not a bleeding heart, the world's going to end climate change. He's just like, this is something that we can fix. This is something that needs to be cleaned up. Let's just clean it up.
It can be done, and I think we can all agree on is a good idea, so let's do it.
And he's not a wealthy person. He's not a, I don't know what the situation is as far as financially or how he kind of rose up in popularity. I only know from Twitter and from, I don't know if he's actually on any social media stuff like that, but this guy's doing awesome work, and if he does anything in my area that I can get to, I'm going to join him in that. So that was it for the stream. It is 9:11. Oh no, we gotta wait one more minute so that way we don't end it. Shouldn't have looked at the clock. My bad. Too soon. All right. It's bad. All right. That's all I had for this stream. Not a good note. Anyway. Yeah, that guy's doing good work, and he is cleaning up and doing what the actual environmental activist should be doing.
I agree. Seems like a good guy.
Yep. I think that is everything. What is going on here? That is weird. Alright, and so we'll try again for next Monday. Hopefully, I wasn't able to make it Monday, but and again last week had issues where I couldn't stream Tuesday, and then Monday personal stuff. So my brother couldn't make it, so I was like, oh, we'll just do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow didn't work out. But next week I should be able to do Monday just fine. If not Monday, then Tuesday. That's kind of how the streams are going for anybody who's paying attention to this. So we're shooting for Mondays. If Monday doesn't work out, then Tuesday's the fallback. And hopefully I get somebody consistently watching. Maybe. It would be nice, but for anybody who does end up watching this in the future, thank you for joining me and learning what was going on at the time. Alright, bye.